Hi guys, this is Miss Bess. This video is on solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So in our last video, we just learned about what completing the square was and what it looked like as a model using tiles. Now we're going to actually use it to solve quadratic equations. So our first example is of a quadratic equation with a leading coefficient of 1. So that means that the number in front of x squared is 1. So you do know that whenever you don't see a number in front of a variable, there's an understood 1 there. So whenever your equation looks like this, just x squared, and you're asked to solve by completing the square, this is what you would do. Now, the process for completing the square is very procedural. So you need to memorize the steps pretty much. I think there's 5 or 6 main, 6 main steps that you need to memorize, and you'll do the same thing every single time with completing the square. So when the leading coefficient is 1, this is what we would do. We have x squared plus 10x minus 3. The first thing you want to do is write the left side as x squared plus bx. That just means that you'll have all of your x's on one side and your constant term on the other. So you just want to move that constant term. So we added 3 to both sides, and now we have x squared plus 10x equals 3. The next step is you want to complete the square. So just like we learned in our last video, completing the square means we're going to take our b term, divide it by 2, and then square it. Our b term is 10. Okay, so we're going to take 10 divided by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Square that, and we get 25. And we're going to add that number to both sides. Remember, whenever you have an equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So we added in 25 here, so we're going to add in 25 here as well. All right, now we're going to write the left-hand side as a binomial squared. Remember, the binomial squared can be made by taking x and then adding it to whatever b over 2 was. So our b over 2 was 10 over 2, which is reduced to 5. Okay, so now our binomial squared is x plus 5 squared. And then we simplify the right-hand side. 3 plus 25 is 28. All right, so from there, we're going to go back to another method, which is solving by square roots. So from there, you're going to take the square root of both sides. So now you have the square root of x plus 5 squared and the square root of 28. So the square root of x plus 5 squared is just x plus 5. And then you have to simplify the square root of 28. You can do this in your calculator, like you saw in that video, simplifying square roots, or you can do it by hand doing prime factorization. So here's showing you by hand because I can't show you with the calculator right now. But square root of 4 times 7, that's the square root of 28. And then I break the 4 down to 2 times 2. One pair represents a root, so this becomes 2 square root of 7. So now I have x plus 5 equals plus or minus 2 square root of 7. So I still need to solve for x. So my last step is to subtract 5 from both sides. And I have x equals negative 5 plus or minus 2 square root of 7. And my solutions are negative 5 plus 2 square root of 7 and negative 5 minus 2 square root of 7. All right, next example, when your leading coefficient isn't 1. So if you have a number in front of x squared, you would start by doing this. So you want to first divide everything by that number, by the leading coefficient. Our leading coefficient was 3 because there's a 3 in front of x squared. So I'm going to divide everything by 3. Okay, so 3 divided by 3 is just 1, so this becomes 1x squared. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2, and then 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 0 divided by 3 is just 0. So now I have x squared minus 2x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, and then from there, you want to go back to the original steps. So we're going to subtract 4 from both sides because we want to get it in the form x squared plus bx. Okay, so now I have x squared minus 2x equals negative 4. And then I want to identify what my b term is so that I can complete the square. So our b term is negative 2. So I'm going to take negative 2 divided by 2 and square it. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Square that and I get 1. All right, now I'm going to add that number to both sides. So I have x squared minus 2x plus 1 and negative 4 plus 1. And then I want to write the left side as the binomial squared. Remember, the binomial squared is just x plus b over 2. I'll go back for a second. Our b over 2 for this problem was negative 2 over 2, which simplified to negative 1. Okay, so that's why my binomial squared is x minus 1 squared. And then I simplified the right-hand side. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. Okay, now take the square root of both sides. The square root of x minus 1 squared is just x minus 1. The square root of negative 3 is going to be I square root of 3. Because remember, anytime you see a negative underneath the square root, there's going to be an I there because that negative comes from the square root of negative 1. And so that gives me plus or minus I square root of 3. And then I have to solve for x. So I add 1 to both sides, and x is equal to 1 plus or minus I square root of 3. And my solutions are 1 plus I square root of 3 and 1 minus I square root of 3. All right, here is a u-try. We have 2x squared minus 12x equals negative 14. And this one is a little bit different because your equation is not automatically set equal to 0. It's already equal to negative 14. So it's already in the form x squared plus bx. So I want you guys to go from there and follow the steps. Go back to the first step and solve by completing the square. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so since it's already in the form x squared plus bx, and we're going to go back to the first step, which is looking to see if it has a leading coefficient, whether that number is 1 or 2 in this case, or 3 or whatever. So our leading coefficient is 2. Okay, so that means we have to divide by our leading coefficient first. So we're going to divide everything by 2. Okay, so 2 divided by 2 is 1, negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6, and negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. Okay, so now we have to complete the square. Our b term was negative 6, so we have negative 6 over 2 squared. Negative 6 over 2 is negative 3, and remember, this is your b over 2. Okay, so you're going to go back to that when you do your binomial squared. So negative 3 squared is 9. So that's the number that we add into both sides. So now we have x squared minus 6x plus 9 and negative 7 plus 9. And now we have to write this as a binomial squared. So that's what I was talking about. You're going to go back to this number. So since our b over 2 was negative 3, our binomial squared is x minus 3 squared. And negative 7 plus 9 is 2. Now we take the square root of both sides. Square root of x minus 3 squared is x minus 3. And the square root of 2 is just the square root of 2. It can't be simplified anymore. So we have plus or minus the square root of 2. And then solve for x. So add 3 to both sides. X is going to be equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 2. So your solutions are 3 plus the square root of 2 and 3 minus the square root of 2. Okay, and that's it. If you have any questions, email me or ask me on Wednesday. You can also email Ms. Wiles or Ms. Elliott. All right. Bye-bye.